Farmer's List of Eligible Lords. Chapter 1. 5 Final Engagements. By the 3rd week of May, Mrs. Hartwell's list had acquired a blue silk ribbon, 3 supplementary pages, and the authority of an Act of Parliament. It lay upon the breakfast table between the silver chocolate pot and a vase of pink tulips, its first page headed, in Mrs. Hartwell's finest hand, Gentleman of amiable character, suitable fortune, and matrimonial promise. Several names bore stars. One was underlined twice, another had been amended in the margin from excellent teeth to teeth uncertain in profile. At the bottom of the 2nd page, a name had been crossed through so emphatically that the paper had nearly torn. Lord Alexander Wycliffe, handsome, heartless, and quite unsuitable. Miss Penelope Hartwell, who was enduring her 3rd London season with the composure of a soldier returning to an unwinnable campaign, set down her cup. "Mamma," she said, "I cannot marry a list." "Certainly not, darling. Lists are very poor dancers. Nor do I intend to marry any of the gentlemen upon it." Mrs. Hartwell looked genuinely troubled. She was a soft, pretty widow of 48, with hopeful blue eyes and a faith in romance that 2 disappointing seasons had bruised but not diminished. Her late husband had left them comfortably provided for, though not richly, and she wanted no title for Penelope merely for its own sake. What she wanted was more alarming, perfect happiness, preferably announced in the Morning Post. "You have not spoken properly to all of them," she protested. "I have spoken to 43 eligible gentlemen since I was presented." 41. Mr. Bellingham was engaged to a lady in Yorkshire, and Sir Thomas spoke only of his spaniels, so I do not count either conversation. "I do." Mrs. Hartwell folded her hands. "Your 1st season was spoiled by your father's illness. Your 2nd was spent refusing every man who could not discuss anything more interesting than the weather. I sympathize, dearest, but the weather is how Englishmen approach emotion." Penelope tried not to smile. "I wish to go home to Hartwell Lodge. I wish to manage the tenants' school, read books without pretending they are sermons, and live peacefully." "At 22? Peace has no minimum age." Her mother regarded her for a long moment. Beneath the ribbons, lists, and romantic schemes, Mrs. Hartwell possessed an inconvenient capacity to understand her daughter. "Very well," she said at last. "I shall abandon matchmaking." Penelope narrowed her eyes. "Entirely?" "Entirely upon one condition. You will attend 5 final engagements and converse with each gentleman I have selected. 1 gentleman per engagement. You need not encourage anyone. You need only be open-minded and civil. And afterward? I shall burn the list." "Not put it away until Christmas?" "Burn it." "Not make another list from memory?" Mrs. Hartwell pressed a hand to her heart. "Penelope." "You have a remarkable memory." 5 engagements, her mother repeated. "Then I will take you home and never again point out an unmarried man unless he is standing in the path of our carriage." Penelope held out her hand. "Agreed." The 1st engagement was Lady Sefton's musical evening, where Mr. Percival Drew performed a tragic Italian song in a cheerful baritone, and afterward asked Penelope whether she believed a wife ought to accompany her husband at the pianoforte every evening. "What if she dislikes music?" Penelope asked. Mr. Drew looked startled. "A wife?" Before Penelope could determine whether he thought wives incapable of dislikes, a low voice beside her said, "You have frightened him, Miss Hartwell. He has imagined an eternity of unaccompanied solos." Lord Alexander Wycliffe stood at her shoulder. He was taller than most men in the room, and dressed with a severity that made the jewelled gentlemen around him resemble decorations upon a cake. His evening coat was black, his cravat immaculate, and his dark hair showed the faintest silver at the temples. His face was lean rather than handsome in the pretty fashion, his gaze direct, and his expression habitually reserved. Penelope had seen him at balls and dinners for 3 seasons. He rarely danced, never lingered near matchmaking mothers, and was widely considered arrogant because he did not soften a plain statement merely to make it prettier. She glanced toward Mrs. Hartwell. Her mother was watching from across the room with alarm. "Lord Wycliffe," Penelope said, "are you in the habit of rescuing frightened musicians?" "Only the public from encores." The corner of his mouth moved. It was not quite a smile, but it transformed him. Mr. Drew, recovering, bowed and escaped toward the lemonade. "You have cost me a place upon Mamma's list," Penelope said. Wycliffe's brows lifted. "Was I ever upon it?" "Briefly, I suspect." "And what caused my removal?" She ought not to have answered, yet something in his dry composure invited honesty. "You were judged handsome, heartless, and quite unsuitable." For one suspended second he stared at her. Then he laughed. It was not a polite drawing-room laugh. It was warm, surprised, and so unlike his reputation that two ladies turned to look. "Your mother is admirably concise," he said, on which point was the ink darkest. "I did not examine the evidence closely." A sensible precaution. A nervous young footman approached and murmured something to him. Wycliffe's amusement vanished. He excused himself at once and crossed the room to an elderly woman seated behind a potted palm. Penelope recognized Mrs. Bell, the widow of a naval clerk. Wycliffe bent to listen, screening her distress from the room. He did not look heartless then. At the second engagement, a breakfast in Regent's Park, Penelope's appointed gentleman was Sir Walter Cresswell, who possessed a pleasant face, 8,000 a year, and 17 opinions about the proper boiling of an egg. Lord Wycliffe was also present. Penelope saw him receive a folded note from Mrs. Bell and conceal it quickly in his coat. At the third engagement, an exhibition at Somerset House, the listed gentleman was Viscount Trowbridge, who praised Penelope's intelligence until she disagreed with him about a painting. He then explained the painting more loudly. Wycliffe appeared beside a landscape of storm-bent trees. "Your admirer is retreating," he observed. "He has gone to find a less argumentative wife." "Then the nation owes you a debt." She turned toward him. "Do you follow Mamma's list, my lord?" "I had begun to wonder whether you followed me." "You were here first." "A damaging fact." He looked tired. There were shadows beneath his eyes, and when a portly gentleman approached him to ask, too casually, whether certain rumours were true, his face closed like a door. "No," Wycliffe said, "they are not." The gentleman bowed and moved away. "What rumours?" Penelope asked. "Nothing that need concern you." His tone was not cruel, but it was final. Penelope felt the small sting of being dismissed. "How fortunate," she said. "I should hate to be concerned by anything beyond boiled eggs and agreeable paintings." She walked away before he could answer. The fourth engagement was Lady Jersey's ball. By midnight, the rooms at Almack's blazed with waxlight, feathers trembled above jewelled heads, and every open window admitted warm air scented with horses and rain. Penelope's fourth candidate, Lord Clavering, danced beautifully and listened attentively. For 12 minutes, she wondered whether Mamma might have chosen well. Then he explained that after marriage he intended his wife to give up charitable committees because public benevolence encouraged unfeminine independence. "How reassuring," Penelope said. "I feared you might object only to my opinions." She left him beside the orchestra. In the passage near the retiring room, she nearly collided with Lord Wycliffe. He held a sheaf of papers tied with green tape. One slipped free and fell at her feet. Penelope picked it up. Across the top was printed, "The St. Anne's Ladies' Charitable Lending Society." Beneath it appeared a familiar name. Mr. Edmund Hartwell, founding subscriber. "My father," she whispered. Wycliffe reached for the paper, but she held it fast. "Why do you have this?" "Not here." "You have told me repeatedly what does not concern me. My father's name concerns me." His gaze moved along the crowded passage. There is a small supper room beyond the stairs. The room was empty except for covered dishes and a silver urn. Wycliffe shut the door, but remained several paces from her. "The society was established 12 years ago," he said. "Your father helped secure its first subscriptions. It provides small, discreet loans to widows and women of respectable families who cannot obtain ordinary credit." "I know. Papa believed charity should help people regain their footing, not require them to remain grateful forever. 3 months ago, the treasurer, Mr. Silas Vane, disappeared. So did nearly £11,000. Penelope stared at him. "The committee asked me to investigate privately," Wycliffe continued. "My aunt founded the society with Lady Bromwich. We hoped to recover the money before the missed payments became known. Mrs. Bell is one of the borrowers. Her quarterly allowance is due next week." "And the rumours?" "Vane once served as a clerk in my estate office. I recommended him." Understanding came swiftly. "People believe you helped him take the funds. Some do. Others merely enjoy the possibility." "Why has no one gone to the magistrates?" "Because the subscription ledger contains the names of the borrowers as well as the patrons. Public proceedings would expose women who came to the society precisely because they had nowhere else to turn. Several could be ruined socially before they are ruined financially." Penelope looked down at her father's name. Grief, familiar and tender, moved through her. During his last illness, Edmund Hartwell had worried less for his own suffering than for the unfinished good he would leave behind. "What are these papers?" "Copies of subscription records. Vane altered the original accounts. I am tracing each payment through household receipts." "Then you require someone who knows the subscribers." "I require an accountant." "You require both. Mama and I have attended every important drawing room in London for 3 years. I know who changed bankers, who dismissed a steward, whose companion manages the household accounts, and which ladies pretend not to know one another." "Miss Hartwell, no. That is not an argument. It may become unpleasant." So was Sir Walter's lecture on eggs. His mouth almost yielded. "Your mother already considers me heartless." "Mamma's opinions are subject to revision. She uses pencil for uncertain cases, and ink for mine." "Then you had better help me prove her wrong." He studied her, and for once, Penelope saw no coldness in his face. She saw worry, fatigue, and a reluctance that seemed rooted not in disdain, but in fear for her. "1 week," he said. "You will review the records in your mother's presence. You will make no inquiries alone." "Agreed." "You concede too quickly. Only when I have obtained what I want." The music began again beyond the door. Lord Wycliffe looked at her as if she had become, quite suddenly, the most dangerous person in London. Chapter 2, Names in Green Ink. Mrs. Hartwell received the news with a silence so complete that Penelope wondered whether the shock had deprived her of speech. Then her mother rose, crossed to the writing desk, and brought out the list. "I knew it," she said. "Knew what?" "That there was something mysterious about Lord Wycliffe. Men do not acquire that particular expression by losing at cards. It requires either a tragic attachment or missing charitable funds." Wycliffe, seated stiffly upon the sofa, appeared uncertain whether he was being mocked. "Mrs. Hartwell," he began, "I must emphasize the need for discretion." "My lord, I carried Penelope through an entire season without telling anyone that Lady Davenham's diamond necklace was paste. I can keep a confidence." "How did you know it was paste?" Penelope asked. "It turned her neck green." Thus began 4 days of ledgers, calling cards, and revelations. The Hartwells' morning room became a private office. Wycliffe brought copies of bank drafts and subscription lists. Penelope arranged them by household. Mrs. Hartwell supplied social intelligence while pretending to embroider. "Lady Oswyn's payment ceased in February," Penelope said on the first afternoon. Her husband died in January, Mrs. Hartwell replied. The estate went to a nephew who reduced her jointure. Yet the ledger shows that she paid £50 in March, Wycliffe said. Penelope examined the entry. In green ink. They searched backward. Every suspicious payment had been entered in the same green ink, though the supposed dates extended across 2 years. Vane created false subscriptions to disguise withdrawals, Penelope said. Wycliffe leaned over her shoulder and used the names of women unlikely to challenge the records. His sleeve brushed hers. The contact was slight, but Penelope became absurdly aware of it. She could see the fine lines at the corner of his eyes and smell rain upon his coat. He straightened first. At the 5th and final engagement, a garden party at Richmond, Mrs. Hartwell presented Penelope to the last gentleman upon her list, the Honourable Mr. Lionel Fane. Mr. Fane was kind, intelligent, and possessed of an excellent sense of humour. He also spoke of his childhood friend, Miss Amelia Cross, with such unconscious devotion that Penelope understood within 10 minutes why he had never married. "You are in love with her," Penelope said. He nearly dropped his glass of punch. "I beg your pardon. Miss Cross. You have mentioned her 7 times. Have I? 8 now." His face altered as astonishment gave way to reluctant hope. "She thinks me incapable of seriousness." "Then do something serious." Across the lawn, Mrs. Hartwell watched Mr. Fane hurry toward Lady Cross's party and sighed. "Another one gone," she murmured. "You promised to burn the list." "Yes, darling, I did not promise not to mourn it." Wycliffe stood beneath a cedar tree, speaking with Lady Bromwich. Even at a distance, Penelope recognized the tension in his shoulders. When Lady Bromwich left, Penelope joined him. "Another payment has failed," he said quietly. "Unless we replace £2,000 by Monday, the Society must suspend its loans." "Can you not provide it?" "I already have." He said it without self-importance. Penelope thought of the gossip that called him grasping and cold. "How much?" "Enough that further payments from me would look like an attempt to purchase silence." Then we find Vane. Their strongest clue was a series of false receipts bearing the name of Lady Cecily Ashcombe. That evening, at a crowded rout in Grosvenor Square, Penelope manoeuvred beside Lady Cecily, while Mrs. Hartwell distracted their hostess with an account of Mr. Fane's impending declaration. Lady Cecily was 29, elegant, and visibly frightened when Penelope mentioned the Society. "I cannot discuss it," she whispered. "Did Mr. Vane ask you to sign receipts?" The lady's fan stopped. "He said my brother's debts would become public. He made me sign blank papers." "Do you know where he is?" "No, but I saw him last month in Bond Street. He called himself Mr. Vale and entered Harbury's auction rooms." Before Penelope could ask more, a gentleman stepped between them. "Miss Hartwell." Lord Clavering's smile was all polished displeasure. "You seem much occupied by other people's private affairs." "Only by my own conversation, sir." "Society has begun to wonder why Wycliffe attends upon you so faithfully." "Society must be exhausted by its labour." His eyes cooled. "You may discover that a gentleman with a damaged reputation is eager to shelter behind an innocent lady's name." Penelope felt anger rise, but Wycliffe appeared before she could reply. "Clavering," he said. The single word contained a warning. Lord Clavering bowed. "I was advising Miss Hartwell to consider how matters appear." "Miss Hartwell is capable of forming her own judgments. Precisely what concerns her friends." When Clavering had gone, Wycliffe turned to Penelope. "You must withdraw from this." "Because he was rude? Because the rumours are spreading?" "Then we should answer them." "We cannot without exposing the borrowers. So you will allow yourself to be condemned." "I recommended Vane. I bear responsibility." "Responsibility is not guilt." London rarely troubles itself with the distinction. Penelope searched his face. Did you know what Clavering would say? I expected something of the kind. And that is why you have been avoiding me in public. He did not deny it. You might have trusted me with the choice, she said. You have had 2 unsuccessful seasons. I will not make the 3rd a disaster. They were not unsuccessful. You did not find a husband. I found that I would rather remain unmarried than be diminished. That is not failure. Something fierce and tender entered his eyes. No, he said. It is not. Around them, the rout glittered and surged. Penelope heard laughter, fans opening, the relentless music of appearances. Lady Cecily saw Vane at Harbury's, she said. He is using the name Vale. Wycliffe closed his eyes briefly. You are impossible. Mamma says I am discerning. Your mother edits reality to suit her affections. It is one of her gifts. The next morning, Wycliffe visited Harbury's alone and learned that Mr. Vale had sold a collection of miniature portraits and several foreign bonds. The address he supplied belonged to an empty lodging in Holborn, but the porter remembered forwarding a parcel to a coaching inn at Hammersmith. By evening, Wycliffe and a Bow Street officer had found Silas Vane preparing to leave for Bristol. Only £3,000 remained. The rest had been lost in speculation. Chapter 3. The Price of a Reputation. Vane's arrest should have cleared Lord Wycliffe. Instead, it sharpened the scandal. An anonymous paragraph appeared in a morning paper, suggesting that a noble lord of famously austere manners had entrusted ladies' charitable subscriptions to his former clerk, concealed the losses, and then arranged a quiet arrest when questions became inconvenient. No names were printed, none were needed. At breakfast, Mrs. Hartwell crushed the paper in both hands. Cowards, she said. If people must be vicious, they should at least possess the courage of a signature. Penelope read the paragraph twice. Clavering. Can you prove it? No. Then we shall merely despise him privately. A note arrived from Wycliffe before noon. The recovered funds and my contribution will cover all existing loans. Lady Bromwich has agreed that the society may continue under new management. Your father's work is secure. For your own sake, our association must now end. Penelope folded the page with careful precision. What does he say? Her mother asked. That he has decided my life for me. Ah. Mrs. Hartwell reached for the list. Mamma. She turned to the page where Wycliffe's name had been crossed out. From a drawer, she took a small knife and began scraping at the ink. I may have pressed too firmly, she muttered. Penelope laughed despite herself, then felt dangerously near tears. That afternoon, Lady Bromwich called. The Society's committee would meet the following day at her house. Several patrons, frightened by the scandal, intended to withdraw. If they did, the loans could be paid, but the Society would close. Alexander will not defend himself, Lady Bromwich said. He believes the women named in the records would bear the cost. Then someone must defend the Society without naming them. Lady Bromwich looked at Penelope. Yes. The committee meeting filled the largest drawing room in Bromwich House. 30 ladies attended, along with several husbands who considered female finance dangerous unless supervised from a comfortable chair. Lord Wycliffe stood near the fireplace, grave and remote. He had not expected Penelope. When she entered with Mrs. Hartwell, anger and relief crossed his face in equal measure. Lady Davenham rose first. We are asked to continue supporting an institution whose funds vanished under Lord Wycliffe's oversight, she said. His intentions may have been honourable, but secrecy has made confidence impossible. Murmurs followed. Penelope's heart beat painfully. She had never addressed a room of consequence. She had spent 3 seasons being praised for sensible conversation and overlooked for lacking theatrical beauty. Now every eye turned toward her. She rose. "The funds did not vanish under Lord Wycliffe's oversight," she said. "They were stolen by a treasurer whose false accounts deceived the committee." Lady Davenham lifted her chin. "Whom Lord Wycliffe recommended?" "Yes, he made an error of judgment. When he discovered it, he worked to trace the money, protected those who had borrowed in confidence, and replaced much of the loss himself." Wycliffe went still. "How do you know this, Miss Hartwell?" someone asked. "Because I assisted him." The room erupted in whispers. Mrs. Hartwell sat straighter, one gloved hand clenched around the handle of her parasol. Penelope continued before fear could silence her. "My father helped establish this society. Its purpose was never to decorate the names of its patrons. It was to give women a means of surviving misfortune without surrendering their dignity. Lord Wycliffe understood that purpose. He could have protected his reputation by publishing the ledgers. He chose instead to protect the women whose names were in them." "And your own reputation?" Lady Davenham asked pointedly. Penelope felt the cruelty beneath the question. "My reputation cannot be preserved by allowing a lie to stand." Silence followed. Then Mrs. Bell rose from the rear of the room. Her face trembled, but her voice did not. "I am one of the borrowers," she said. "Lord Wycliffe paid my allowance when the society could not. He asked for neither gratitude nor recognition." Lady Cecily Ashcombe stood next. "Mr. Vane forced me to sign false receipts. Lord Wycliffe did not conceal the theft for his own sake. He concealed my shame." One by one, 3 more women rose. The scandal changed shape before Penelope's eyes. What had been whispered as evidence of Wycliffe's guilt became proof of the society's necessity. Lady Davenham, who possessed a rigid conscience beneath her rigid feathers, pledged £100. 2 others followed. By the meeting's end, the society had enough new subscriptions not merely to survive, but to establish independent audits. In the hall, Wycliffe caught Penelope before she reached the door. "You should not have done that." "You are welcome. Clavering will make certain every word is repeated. Then for once, he will be useful." "Penelope." It was the first time he had used her Christian name. The sound of it in his voice stripped the room of everything trivial. "Do you understand what you risked?" "Perfectly. Then why?" "Because it was true." He looked at her as though truth were too small an answer and too great a gift. "I have spent years," he said slowly, "believing that if I required nothing from anyone, I could disappoint no one. Vane was my clerk. His wife died, and I mistook his bitterness for grief. I advanced him. I trusted him. When he betrayed that trust, I thought the debt mine to pay. You are not responsible for every wrong committed by someone you once helped. I know that in reason. But not in your heart." His gaze held hers. "You see too much. You show more than you suppose." He lifted one hand as if to touch her cheek, then stopped. Footsteps sounded above. Wycliffe stepped back. "I cannot call upon you again," he said. Pain struck with humiliating force. "Because you do not wish to." "Because I wish to more than I have wished for anything in years." She could not speak. "If I proposed now," he continued, "the world would say I used your affection to repair my name. Worse, you might accept because you believe I need rescuing. You are remarkably certain of my motives. I am certain of my own selfishness. Marriage to you would give me everything. Your courage, your intelligence, your warmth. What would it give you? A husband 11 years older, a damaged name, and half London waiting to say you were sacrificed to save him. It might give me the man I love." The words escaped quietly. Wycliffe's face changed. For a moment, Penelope saw joy so naked that it hurt to witness. Then discipline closed over it. "Do not," he said, almost roughly. "Do not offer me that while you are still standing in the ruins of my scandal." He bowed and left her. Penelope returned home in a fury too deep for tears. Mrs. Hartwell listened without interruption. When Penelope finished, her mother took the list from the desk and placed it upon the fire. The blue ribbon curled first. The pages blackened at the edges. "I thought I was searching for a gentleman who deserved you," Mrs. Hartwell said. "I did not understand that no list could tell me who allowed you to be entirely yourself. He has left me entirely myself and entirely miserable." "Yes, it is very noble of him. Men are often most foolish when they are being noble." Penelope watched Lord Clavering's starred name disappear in flame. "What am I to do?" Mrs. Hartwell considered. "Nothing. Nothing. My darling, you have investigated a theft, preserved a charitable society, and defended a baron before half the formidable women in London. You have done enough. If Lord Wycliffe is worthy of you, he must now find his own courage." Chapter 4. The Gentleman Not Upon the List. For 10 days, Lord Alexander Wycliffe did not call. London, deprived of certainty, invented several versions of events. In one, Penelope had entrapped him. In another, he had ruined her. In a third, Mrs. Hartwell had engineered the entire scandal to secure a title for her daughter. Mrs. Hartwell was delighted by the last. "It makes me sound powerful," she said. Penelope attended no balls. She worked with Lady Bromwich on new rules for the lending society, 2 treasurers instead of 1, quarterly reviews, and records that separated subscribers from borrowers. She told herself she was content. On the 11th morning, Mr. Lionel Fane called with Miss Amelia Cross beside him, and happiness written foolishly across his face. They were engaged. "You were right," he told Penelope. "I did something serious." "He proposed in the rain," Miss Cross said, "without an umbrella. That was not the serious part. It was raining very seriously." Their joy warmed the room after they had gone. "One successful match," Mrs. Hartwell said, "and I did not even put Miss Cross upon the list." That afternoon, invitations arrived for the St. Anne's Society subscription ball. Lady Bromwich had decided that secrecy had protected the borrowers, but nearly destroyed the institution. The ball would publicly celebrate the Society's purpose, while preserving individual confidences. Penelope did not ask whether Wycliffe would attend. She wore pale gold silk, not because it was fashionable, but because her father had once said the colour made her look as if she carried her own candlelight. Mrs. Hartwell fastened a small string of pearls at her throat. "Your father would have been proud," she said. The ballroom at Bromwich House glowed with hundreds of candles. A new subscription book stood open near the entrance. Before the first dance, Lady Bromwich announced that the Society's missing funds had been restored through recovered assets, private contributions, and new pledges. Then she thanked Miss Penelope Hartwell for preserving the work her father had begun. Applause rose around Penelope. It embarrassed her, yet it also lifted something within her. She had entered her 3rd season believing herself a failure because no gentleman had chosen her. Now she understood how small that measure had been. Across the room, Lord Wycliffe stood in the doorway. He looked as he always did, dark, composed, and slightly apart from the glittering world, but when his eyes found hers, nothing in his face was cold. He crossed the room. "Miss Hartwell." He bowed to her mother. "Mrs. Hartwell." "Lord Wycliffe," Mrs. Hartwell said, "you will be relieved to know that the list no longer exists. I had understood my exclusion from it to be permanent. I have revised my opinion." "In pencil?" "In ink." Penelope looked between them. "Mamma." "I promised not to point out unmarried gentlemen," Mrs. Hartwell said innocently. "I said nothing about speaking to those who presented themselves." She moved away with astonishing speed toward Lady Bromwich. The orchestra began a waltz. Wycliffe held out his hand. Will you dance with me? You do not dance. I have recently discovered that reputation is an unreliable source. Penelope placed her hand in his. He danced beautifully. Of course he did. They moved beneath the chandeliers while the crowded room blurred into candlelight and music. The paper printed a correction this morning, he said. I saw it. Clavering's authorship of the paragraph became known. Lady Davenham persuaded his aunt to speak to the editor. Persuaded. Threatened to exclude him from every dinner table in Mayfair. Terrifying. Effective. When the dance ended, Wycliffe did not release her hand. There is something I must show you. He led her, with Mrs. Hartwell's obvious approval, to the quiet library. Upon a desk lay a document bearing the Society's seal. The committee has created a permanent advisory position, he said. The Edmund Hartwell Fellowship will train women in household accounts and small enterprise. They wish you to direct it. Penelope touched her father's name. This was your idea. The name was. The committee's eagerness to employ you required no persuasion. Is this why you came tonight? It is one reason. He took a breath. For the first time since she had known him, Lord Alexander Wycliffe looked uncertain. I stayed away because I told myself distance was honourable. In truth, it was fear. I feared you would wake one morning and discover that gratitude had disguised itself as love. I feared I wanted your happiness so desperately that I might mistake possession of you for providing it. Penelope said nothing. He must finish this for himself. Then I watched you build something from the very scandal I thought would diminish you. You did not save my reputation. You made it answer to the truth. You did not sacrifice yourself. You chose your ground and stood upon it. He came closer. I cannot promise that society will always be kind. I cannot promise never to make another error of judgment. I can promise that I will never ask you to become smaller for my comfort. I will listen when you disagree with me, though I reserve the right to be irritating before admitting you are correct. A grave defect. One of several. Your mother may require a supplementary page. Penelope's eyes stung. I love you, he said, not because you defended me, but because you saw me clearly and demanded that I see you clearly in return. Penelope Hartwell, will you marry a gentleman who was never upon the list? You were upon it, briefly, and emphatically crossed out. Must we preserve every humiliating detail? For accuracy. His mouth curved, but his hand trembled as he reached for hers. Yes, Penelope said. I will marry you. The reserve left his face all at once. He drew her close with a tenderness that made the long days of waiting fall away. When he kissed her, it was not the triumphant claim London would later imagine, but a quiet promise between two people who had chosen each other without disguise. A soft sound came from the doorway. Mrs. Hartwell stood there, openly crying into a lace handkerchief. Mamma, Penelope said, I was not listening. Lady Bromwich sent me to find a book. Which book? Wycliffe asked. Mrs. Hartwell glanced helplessly at the shelves. One about prudent investments. In the poetry section. Love is an investment, she said with dignity. Wycliffe offered her his arm. Mrs. Hartwell, before you revise your opinion of me again, may I ask for your blessing? Her expression softened. My dear Lord Wycliffe, I wanted Penelope to find a man who would protect her heart. I see now that she has found one who also respects her mind. You have my blessing, provided you understand that she will continue to interfere in charitable accounts, challenge foolish opinions, and frighten musicians. I depend upon it. Their engagement appeared in the papers 3 days later. Society declared it astonishing, inevitable, romantic, calculating, and entirely unexpected, according to the preferences of each speaker. Lord Clavering left London for his estate. Mr. and Miss Fane married in August. The St. Anne's Ladies' Charitable Lending Society reopened with more subscribers than it had possessed before the theft. Under Penelope's direction, the Edmund Hartwell Fellowship taught bookkeeping to widows, companions and tradeswomen, several of whom went on to manage businesses of their own. Penelope and Alexander were married in a small church filled with white roses. He looked solemn until Mrs. Hartwell whispered that she had prepared a new list entitled Excellent Qualities in a Son-in-Law. Then he laughed aloud before the entire congregation. At the wedding breakfast, Penelope found the list beside her plate. It contained only one name: Lord Alexander Wycliffe, handsome, honourable, occasionally impossible, and exactly suitable. Below it, in smaller writing, Mrs. Hartwell had added, Penelope Hartwell, sensible, courageous, frequently impossible, and very much loved. Penelope passed the page to her husband. He read it, looked at her, and smiled with such unguarded happiness that she understood at last why her mother had never surrendered her faith in romance. The list, after all, had not found Penelope a husband. It had merely taught them all how little a list could know of love. The end. Thank you, dear reader of the Regency Gazette, for joining us in another tale of love, intrigue, and whispered ballroom secrets. If today's romance delighted you, kindly bestow a like upon this video. It helps our Gazette reach more lovers of Regency storytelling. For weekly journeys into dukes, debutantes, scandals, and slow-burning devotion, please subscribe to the Gazette and tap the